Hello and welcome to another episode of Spirit Plant Medicine. My name is Marc Caron, and as we get started, I want to recognize that we're broadcasting here from Hubcast Studios, where we reside on the unceded traditional territories of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, Kwantlen, Kaikait, and Tsawwassen First Nations land. And I'm here with our co-host of the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference and my good friend, Mr. Stephen Gray, who's been traveling with spiritual and medicine pathways for 50 years. He's a writer, educator, conference organizer, speaker, and cannabis ceremony leader. Stephen is the author and editor of 3 books, including the popular Cannabis and Spirituality, An Explorer's Guide to an Ancient Plant Spirit Ally, and recently released How Psychedelics Can Help Save the World. Visionary and Indigenous Voices Speak Out. And for 12 years, Stephen has been the co-director and the MC of the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference here in Vancouver. Welcome again, Stephen. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Yes, Mark, of course, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited today because we have a special guest who's also a presenter at this year's conference, Sundance Chief Rueben George, who is the Director of Community Development for the Tsleil-Waututh Nation Indigenous Community Organizer and a spiritual leader. He's a Sundance Chief and the grandson of Chief Dan George, an Oscar-nominated and universal respected First Nations leader. Rueben started his career by founding and creating Duke's Youth Healing Center 19 years ago. He has learned very quickly that the foundation for his success in his work would be his culture and spirituality. Ruben's grandfather taught him, anything you learn in college or university on healing, there is a First Nation teaching that says the same thing. Based on the teachings of his elders, Rueben created a reference library of successful psychological healing programs and translated them into First Nations culture and spirituality. As well as being a Sundance Chief, pipe carrier, and sweat lodge leader, Rueben is an active participant in his Coast Salish Winter Spirit Dancing Ceremony. Rueben has worked across Canada and the United States, facilitating workshops on healing and wellness. And in every project Rueben works on, he is sure to incorporate his culture and spirituality. In his present position as the Director of Community Development for the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, Rueben oversees the education, social services, employment and training, youth and elders programs, family support programs, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation daycare and early childhood learning. Rueben has just recently published his book, It Stops Here. And we are looking forward to this great conversation where we're going to talk about his book. And we're also going to talk about the theme that we've had for these programs the past few weeks, which is what is the role of plant medicine and psychedelics at this time of rapid change and uncertainty in the world today. Welcome, Chief Rueben. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. We're glad to have you here.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Stephen. It's good to be here on this beautiful sunny day in Vancouver.
Yeah, it sure is a beautiful day. That's fantastic. So before we get started, Stephen, is there anything you'd like to say, share, ask before we dive into all the good stuff for the next hour?
No, well, nothing comes to mind immediately. I hope to be an active participant in the questioning and discussion with Rueben. But other than that, it's just our conference coming up, and it's clearly we're in a time of rapid change and upheaval and tumult and chaos and the increasing levels of depression and anxiety on the planet. And we really need messages that are positive, hopeful, believable, and actionable. And that's a big part of what the conference is about, share and bring people in that can talk about those kind of things. And also, we may bring this up at the end anyway, but I'll say it while I'm thinking of it now. Also, one thing that's all but unique about our conference, the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, is that we hold all the events in all the talks in one room. And so we're like a tribe, a temporary tribe for the weekend. And, as Mark mentioned, we've been around this is our 12th year. And so we know from our past experience that when we do it that way, there's an energy that develops over the course of the weekend, and an incredible amount of connecting with people that tell us often later, this conference changed my life because I had a conversation with somebody that opened up a door that I didn't even know was there. So, just putting a good word in for the power and value of our conference. And with that, Marc, I suppose you have a lead.
I just want to say, Stephen, I think what that really gives power to is community and connection. Right.
Absolutely.
Keep people separated. Everybody's together and everybody's equal. It's just a beautiful thing. The experiences people have from a community and connection standpoint. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm really curious to find out what Ruben's talking about in that book, but you probably have a lead-in question. So I'll pass the baton back to you, Marc.
Well, we do have a leading question. This has kind of been the theme that we've had this month as we've been, doing these pre-conference talks, and it's really comes curious to me because I'm going to pre-frame it where Chief Rueben, I had the pleasure of connecting with you during Peace Week when you were speaking with Ben Bowler from Unity Earth. And you had said something that really caught my eye. And what you had said was, as you were talking about your book and many things that you were working on, you had brought up the subject of plant medicine, and you had mentioned that you had once believed that we had to have connection to spirit and source before you would ever suggest or recommend or bring people to a plant medicine path. And through your work, you had changed your mind and perception on that. And I thought it was kind of an interesting lead in, because the nature of the question that we discuss is, what do you see as the role of plant medicines and psychedelics at this time of rapid change and uncertainty in the world today? And if we start there, maybe we can go in and unpack the rest of, what we get from you here today.
Sure, thanks. I like the question. So the way I'm taught and what I've been taught, it's like my whole life in some ways. So for example, our ceremonies, our sweat lodges and Sundance. So when you come to ceremony, we'll first teach you how to smudge, and that's simple. And when you're ready, we'll give you a bundle. And the bundle has fire, earth, water, and sky represented. So abalone shell or some shell to represent the ocean, the water, and then a feather to represent air, then sage, sweetgrass, whatever you might use to represent earth. And of course, you use matches, make a flame, represent the energy of the sun. But when you put any of those two things together, and I've seen this in ceremony, not just we do, but all over the world, when you put any of those two elements together, a spirit's born out of it with intention. And this is an important thing in ceremony because, in all religions and all spiritual practices, people screwed up by putting their ego in front of these teachings. And that's the teachings of humanity, of love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion, understanding, truth, knowledge, and wisdom. Those are the ways that we're supposed to raise a baby. If you look at a baby's born, and if you just look at it, maybe even a 1-year-old baby, they'll look at you with unconditional love. No prejudice, no anger, no hate, no judgment, no trauma. And so when we're born like that, every single human being, those teachings of humanity are what we are supposed to instill in a child, but society replaces spirit with a whole bunch of different things. Because spirit can be created by lighting your smudge, and a spirit's born out of it with intention, with those teachings of humanity. And love is the spirit. Two people come together, they fall in love, they could do a ceremony all over the world. They call it marriage to honor that love. But two people could come together, or multiple things could come together and create the spirit of trauma. And that's what we live in today. Because if we're supposed to be raised with those fundamentals of love and honor and respect and all those really good things, what is it replaced with that society gives? What is it replaced with racism or prejudice or lack of spirit itself is a trauma in itself, not believe in true spirit. And so we teach that in smudge. So how to smudge yourself and how to clean yourself off, clean your energy. That smoke is like a trail into the heavens. It's here physically, but it goes into the heavens, and you can add your prayer to it and send your hurt, your pain, or trauma, whatever you're feeling with it. And then you replace it with those fundamentals of humanity. So we start with that. And then you might come to a pipe ceremony. And a pipe is the stone represents the female, the stem represents a male. You put them together. That's the teaching of man and woman. And that also, when it's lit with tobacco or different things, and you smoke it, that's your breath is putting your prayer out into the heavens. You're part of that. Then you might come to a sweat lodge. A sweat, so many different teachings in a sweat. Just for example, the lava rocks, where are they from? They're from the center of Mother Earth. They were pushed up through a volcano, but at one time it was in liquid form. But in the center of Mother Earth, like in the center of all of us, is where our spirit sits. So what it is essentially is the energy of Mother Earth's spirit. And we heat them up to be red hot to activate that rejuvenation spirit of what Mother Earth consistently does. Always trying to rejuvenate and make things better and heal things. And so there's teachings around that, like the tree. We use wood to heat up the lava rocks. And what does that tree do? It's reaching up and catching the energy of the sun. And then we light it and we release that energy of the sun onto those rocks. And then we go inside and we pray and we meditate. And, we could have a physical connection to everything of the four elements: fire, earth, water, earth, and sky. We breathe the air. We're on earth. We could drink the water. But the element of the sun is a little bit hard to have a connection with. That's why we make it hot in the sweat, to teach us to have a connection to that spirit of the sun. So then you could go to Vision Quest and a whole bunch of other ceremonies. But when you're ready, after that, then you could come to Sundance. And that's a self-induced higher state of spiritual consciousness. That's experienced in heaven. And it's a long process to get to that point. And your moment might be only minutes. So with that, in some of the ceremonies in Sundance family that I belong to in the Dakotas, they also do peyote ceremonies, Native American church, and different ceremonies like that. And I used to think, don't take something that brings you to that heavenly place until you can get there on your own. And you see that process of the sweat lodge, the Vision Quest, the pipe ceremony, the smudge. There's all those different intricate steps that bring you to that point to help you to have a clearer understanding of the experience that you're going to have when you go to heaven. I said, maybe you should figure that out first before you take a medicine that brings you there. But I changed my thought because we've been servicing some residential school elders, between 70 and 80 now. And, they've been through horrible things, like my mom, for example. She witnessed little children murdered, raped, and starved, and a whole bunch of horrible things that the nuns and priests had no religious or spiritual belief in their own teachings of what that Bible says, because the Bible has some good teachings in there, but they had no belief in it, and they hurt them. It really hurt them physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, sexually. It hurt them, and so we've been putting the elders through the program. And the changes that we see are so significant. I had to change the way we think. Well, how we run our program, though, and what we look at is those things that you're supposed to learn before you take a medicine that brings you there. That's our integration. That's what we start to teach them, which they should have learned in the first place. But what it does, it gives them a head start, though, because the healing happens. And how I understand the healing to happen is, like I said, love has a spirit. When you light your smudge, the smoke has a spirit, but trauma has a spirit. And it could be intergenerational trauma. Modern studies showing that it could be 3 generations of trauma that you could be carrying from your grandparents. And it's like an open wound on your arm that needs stitches and band-aids and antibiotics. And if you don't deal with it, it's going to pass on to the generation. If they don't deal with it, then it's going to pass on to the next generation. And then and what they accumulate in their trauma, it's going to be handed over to the next generation. So what we do ceremonially, what we do with the medicine, is we close that wound and we let it scar. And we help them to heal. And then that gives them a head start on it and gives them freedom. Because another thing too is trauma could be the bad things that we did. I know I wasn't a good person. I'm still not a good example about how to be, but I said sorry for all the bad things I did to anyone who I could. In my addiction, my alcoholism, I did horrible things. And I said sorry. And spiritually, I said sorry. And I closed that wound on my part. And when I closed the wound on my part, I found freedom. I wasn't a prisoner of all the guilt that I carried, but also all the horrible things that happened to me, because in the residential school, that was intergenerational trauma that was passed on, that wasn't dealt with by our community or by family or whoever it might be. And so I wasn't immune to those bad things. And the trauma that I went through from when I was a kid, I was carrying that. And I was also a prisoner of not just the shame of the things I did, but as a prisoner of the bad things that happened to me. So in ceremony, we close those wounds. I closed those wounds. So I found freedom again in ceremony. So then we start the integration. So the story that I just said for myself could be the same story that could be said for thousands of Indigenous people right across Canada that went through similar traumas. And ceremony has been a key element in fixing our people, going back to our culture and our spirituality, and not that, but the genuine part of it. Because the church, and there's genuine people that priests. I did a ceremony with 12 priests a couple months ago in my sweat lodge. They wanted to come and learn, and I said, "Okay, come and I'll teach you." And then I went to their church and I prayed with them too. I'm going to do a ceremony with a dozen rabbis, and I don't say no to people who want to pray, because my grandfather said that. He said, if you're Catholic, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Baha'i, or Indigenous, or sweat lodge, or longhouse, whatever you are, just be good at it. And what he meant is to good at those fundamentals of humanity, of love and honor and respect and dignity and all those good things that I'm talking about. If you're good at those things, we could have a prayer with each other. So it's important who we pray with, that they have an understanding of what I'm saying, to set that narrative that is so important without ego or false values, because this whole society is raised on that. So you look at now our Indigenous community, but look at the world community, how this intergenerational trauma has been passed on by false values and false beliefs of this Western way of living, of money or greed or the American dream or whatever it might be. Those false goals take you away from a goal that is easy to be laid out in our cultural and spiritual ceremonies. Because what I get out of it, so I love my kids more. I love my partner more. And why not? And in turn, I love those elements that I use, fire, earth, water, and sky in my ceremonies. And I do something about it. I've been stopping the TMX pipeline for 13 years. We did a 1,200-page assessment. We did a spill analysis. We did a clean analysis. We did multiple economic studies, all based on Tsleil-Waututh law, which is truth, health, family, and culture, with those fundamentals of humanity, our cultural roots that we've been living by as law for time out of mind. And when and I think those things are happening, because I share this, when you come to ceremony and something good happens to you, spirit touches your soul and you leave uplifted. No matter what ceremony you're a part of, that's how it should be. If you leave uplifted, then it's done right. If you don't leave uplifted, something's done wrong. In my ceremony and anyone else's ceremony, you don't have to be there if you're disrespected in any way. But if you leave feeling good and uplifted, you have a responsibility to share that. And what you're sharing is that love connection. And what I try to teach people is, number one, they're lost. First, getting connected with your own spirit, getting connected to your own ancestors. They're spirits, they're your angels. Getting connected to Creator, and in turn, everything else. And I know when people do, they want to make choices for our future generations and the way we're going. And it's not good because there's atmospheric rivers, there's floods and fires. There's people dying of fentanyl downtown. There's people don't care about that stuff. But when you come to ceremony and I show you spirit, you're going to care. When we set that narrative, you're going to care. And that's what we want for people. And that's what we're seeing. We already knew that. I do self-induced higher state of spiritual consciousness in my ceremonies with no medicine. I will now. I've been doing it for 30 years, just a short time. I'm young in that way. And now with the medicine, we have something that could help too. But it's important to set that sound and solid narrative of having good spirit in your ceremonies. So I think I do believe that we're going to create a lot of good change. We want to help, of course, our Indigenous people that have been through this colonial system, residential schools and things. We want to help, but we want to help everybody because you're still living through the colonial system that was created thousands of years ago, that misplaced people's beliefs with false values. And I think that right there will create lots of change. And that's what the world needs, is genuine spirit again in their lives. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah, beautiful. Rueben, you're an easy interview. One question, you have a lot of really valuable information to share. Hey, I'm wondering if I can ask you a question. Just tell us or tell me if that's not appropriate for this kind of forum, but you've made reference to the medicine itself a number of times, and as I understand it, because it does grow around here, you folks have been working with the psilocybin mushroom, and so I'm wondering if it's okay to talk about it, if you can say a little bit about the structure of how you work with that medicine in the context of your traditional understanding of ceremony and that sort of thing, and perhaps even go on from there to say, you mentioned, I think you were saying earlier that these elders that have come in, I'm not sure if you were implying they were doing the psilocybin mushroom, but if they were, can you talk about what they're experiencing that helps them?
Okay, so I think what was important is we tried different things. How it started as a volunteer to men's treatment program. I'll say this really quick. And the guys were falling off. And I really wanted to find something that could help create change in a better way, that they wouldn't fall off and start using drugs and alcohol. And then I read an article on ayahuasca. And then I talked to a doctor who's a friend that was working with psilocybin. And from there, it took off. And, but it took us 6 months working with doctors and therapists in creating a program for them to talk us into doing it ourselves. And we said, no, we don't do that. We're spiritual people or whatever, and we're sober. And then I was sitting in the meeting once and I said, we can't be telling people what to do unless we're willing to do it ourselves. So I said, we have to try it. So we did. But it took 6 months of us wrestling with that idea. But the direct changes that happened to us were fast and swift. And what we know and what we realized and what we do know is my ancestors in the land right here knew every nook and cranny of our traditional territory, and every plant and every medicine and every animal and every insect, everything. We knew the medicine of how it works. And it was no different with this. And now I hear stories about it, of how it helped men, our boys, become into the change of life into men. How it was included in art that in totem poles, that they took it to see the vision of what they're going to carve, how they use it for healing. So we have those ancestral stories that were embedded in it. And I knew that too, because we did try some of the medicine of our relations in Central and South America, and they're really good. The peyote ceremony, Native American church I've been to, and it's really, really good. I liked it. It was so beautiful. I'm from the land here. The medicine's from here. And when I took it, it resonated with us. And we learned really quick to have a reciprocal relationship of spirit to that mushroom that we're from, that my ancestors had and have. So it was embedded in us to have that same reciprocal relationship to it and with it and to work with it. And so when the elders took it, they were dealing with tremendous problems. You'll see it in our documentary that's coming out on medicine. But one of the elders, she explained that, I raised my kids really tough. Residential school made me really tough, and I wasn't as affectionate as to my kids as I wanted to be. I want to hug them and hold my grandkids. One ceremony changed that. All her adult kids have come to ceremony, and her grandkids are starting to come to ceremony that are of age, and their siblings. It changed her life to be able to embrace and to love and to hold and to be a part of. And that's one story, but they're all like that, coming out with significant changes. And so the idea behind that is, and that's the same with my book. We didn't talk about that yet, but that's the same with the book. Like you could read it and say, oh, poor Indians, First Nations. But the thing is, our world is at a state of trauma and hurt and pain. And we're using ourselves as an example about how you could heal and move forward, because everybody's suffering, everybody's in trauma. We're not the same person who we were when we're born, with no prejudice, no anger, no hate, with a pure eyes and unconditional love for everything. We're not that anymore. Society warps us and screws us up and gives us false values that we all need to heal. Thank you.
Yeah. So do you bring in your actual traditional practices, chants, songs, and things into the psilocybin ceremonies? Yeah,
we're figuring that out. And my singers at the Sundance, some of them know between 200 and 1,000 songs. Some of the main singers, the main teachers of those songs. And so, but those songs are for specific ceremonies. So we're coming up with our songs that will be specific to this. So I've been talking to some of our singers, and so right now we're borrowing a lot from others that they have songs, and we have playlists like everybody else. As long as it's indigenous, it connects and it resonates, we could use it. Because songs have a spirit too. They do. And we're starting to learn our own songs. And some of the practices, we're figuring that out too. I think with the medicine, because what we do in Sundance, it takes a lot of effort. Years of effort. And some people get 15 minutes of a higher state of spiritual consciousness. But with this medicine, you could have between 1 hour and 8 hours of spiritual consciousness. So when we're in that spiritual realm, for example, my last ceremony, I was in a heavenly state, and I see in the spirit of the song come into that heavenly state. But what we need to do is send out the prayer that we could see go to heal people from that heavenly state. And when we send out the prayer, we ask for messages and we ask for resolve. If we're seeing and we're feeling a spiritual experience, what's the resolve behind that? How could we use it to improve our life and improve the world? So we start to look at medicines. If somebody is going through something, what is lavender? There's some lavender right here. What does it represent? Love. Sage right here. I got some sage. What does it represent? Cleansing. So we start to incorporate those things and what people might need into those ceremonies. So we need to understand, like my friend wanted to learn ayahuasca, and they said, eat this and only this plant until it speaks to you. And she's been down there for 9 years, and she still hasn't learned it yet because she hasn't mastered all those medicines of each one of those things in the jungle. But I'm not saying we have to do that, but I'm saying we have to understand what we're using in our ceremonies to help people. That'd be helpful, much, much more helpful. So the songs are like that. What songs to use to help people? Because if I'm in a sweat lodge and somebody goes, "Hey, can I sing a song?" Sometimes I'll say no, because I need a song to be sung to the energy that's in that room. If it's sadness, I need somebody to sing a song to help that sadness heal. If it's somebody mourning, I need a song to help, that could be sung to help somebody go through their mourning. And that's the same with this medicine. When we're figuring it out really quick, because we've been down this path already before with the other ceremonies that we do to use to go to a higher state of spiritual consciousness.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's fantastic. I don't think anybody knows that your people, or the First Nations people, have a history that goes back a long way of using this mushroom, for the visioning of totem poles and different things like that. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Did you have another question, Marc?
Well, first, thank you very much for what you've shared, so far, Chief Rueben. It's just always gets me thinking. And one of the things that I want to just put out there that you really put an importance to is, when we talk about plant medicine, and because we talk about, psychedelics primarily, not all psychedelic and psychoactive plants are just medicine. There's so many other plants out there that are medicine, that grow naturally and wild, not just here locally in beautiful British Columbia, but all over the world. And I think that as we go and look at this plants, spirit of the plants, plants, they're the original pharmacy. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom that we can learn when we take a look at what's out there for plants. And it's not just about a magic mushroom or ayahuasca or something that's, peyote or San Pedro that's psychoactive, but it's about, plants that can make a difference. Like you say, lavender for love and sage for cleansing. And those are just two great examples that you put out there. So, but maybe I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about your book, because this is a pretty powerful book, and it's called It Stops Here, and it's standing up for our lands, our waters, and our people. And, maybe you can tell us what inspired you to write this book, what you've learned, what you would like to see happen as we move forward as a culture and society in regards to some of these important things that have been happening, not just locally here in British Columbia and Canada, but even around the world.
Rueben, before you get into that, I was just wondering if I could quickly, not to take you away from this question, Marc, of course, but just in regard to the songs you were talking about, I'm kind of speaking above my pay grade here, because it's not my direct personal experience in terms of receiving songs, but I just finished reading Bill Bernard's book, Liquid Light. He's a sort of a master in the Santo Daime, and I also spent a long time around the Native American Church, and I've been around the mestizo shamanism practice style of ayahuasca work as well. And in both that mestizo tradition and the Santo Daime tradition in particular, they say all of their songs, for the South Americans, it's the Icaros. For the Santo Daime people, they call them hymns. They're all received. So, as I say, I'm, kind of speaking above my pay grade here, but I'm wondering if you folks, if there's a way that you can sort of put out a prayer directly to ask the spirits to give you songs that are specifically for that psilocybin ritual.
Well, I guess I wasn't clear. That's what we're doing.
You are doing that. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're slowly doing that, and it's needed, because, like I said, the medicines that we use is from here. We are from here. We have an ancestral connection from here. But one thing we believe in, it's a teaching that every single word that we have has a soul and a spirit. And so do the songs, but they're all out there. They're all in literally the spiritual cloud. And it's infinite. And so we, eventually we're going to catch those songs and bring it back that our ancestors used, I believe.
Beautiful. Anyway, didn't mean to distract you too far from Marc's question about the book. So carry on, please.
So I wrote down 3 things, and what inspired me was it was just a friend who he's got his PhD at UBC, and he said they'd pay him for a year to do work on a project on whatever he felt, and he said, "Do you want to do a book?" And I said, "Sure." And so it was simple as that. But it was the funny thing, because I came home and my son was home. This is like 3 years ago, and I said, "Son, I'm going to do a book." I said, "I don't know. I agreed to it, but I don't know. I don't think I could do a book. Like, what do you think?" And he's like, "It's easy, Dad." He said, "It's Star Wars." And I went, "What?" He goes, it's the evil empire, Canada, against the Georges and Tsleil-Waututh. Oh yeah, okay, well, I can do that.
That's good.
And what do I want people to learn? I thought it would be harder to read than the feedback that I'm getting, because it's sad about the colonial residential school effects of what my brothers and my mom went through and passed on to us. It's sad. I talk about my mom witnessing murders and horrible things. My dad too, but my dad overdosed and died on Main and Hastings, and my stepdad overdosed and died too. And I have lots of aunts and uncles that died down there, and that's trauma. And so we in the process we deal with that trauma, and I talked about the freedom that we have. And I can't. This part's not in the book, but yeah, it is. But in our sweat lodge, my son was, when both my kids were born, I was running the sweat, or no, my brother was, and my mom came to the door, and she's holding my son, and she goes, "Rube, here, come grab your son." And it was so significant, because I took my son from my mom, and that was 3 generations coming together to heal, to say no more. And the same thing happened with my daughter. They said, "Here, come grab your daughter." And I took her in the sweat lodge for the first time, and they closed the door, and it was pitch black, and we sang songs. And again, it was 3 generations of Georges saying, "No more. No more hurt, no more pain, no more trauma. We're going to heal those wounds of that spiritual trauma. And mentally, emotionally, and physically too, we're going to heal." And so what I hope it inspires, and I talk about this often and over again, is the tools that we used to do our healing was our culture and spirituality, was the teachings, those fundamentals. When the people are in residential school, what they're supposed to really receive is love, and what they had is hate. Honor. Instead of being honored, they're ridiculed. Instead of being respected, they're degraded. So all those fundamentals were reversed. And what we do is we bring people back to that. But it happens in our society. And I mentioned this in the book. My kids, my ex-wife, a beautiful person, Deborah Parker, she's amazing, and she does amazing work. She worked in the past with President Obama and Bernie Sanders, and she helps Indigenous women and the rights of Indigenous and women in general. But she's from Tulalip, and the kids, because they're a wealthy nation, had an option to go to a private school or to public school. So we tried the private school. My son didn't like it, took him out. But my daughter, I started to see they teach them different. When you go to a public school, all of us, they say, if you're really smart, you could be a doctor or a lawyer. You're really smart. But in the private school, they're saying, no, each and every one of you, you're going to be a politician and really wealthy. My daughter graduated at 15. Every single one of those kids she graduated with, they all graduated at 15. Every single one of them took political science and business. They're doing what they're taught they're capable of doing, but it's the same with our society. We're doing what we're taught what we're capable of doing, and then we learn from that same standard. Because look at the news. Look how it tells us. Look at the government. Look how they're screwing everybody over, and they're helping the rich get richer. Look at the oil, for example. We told them, And the federal court appealed that. It doesn't make economic sense. And the 3 judges said, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, you're right. The pipeline doesn't make economic sense. In Canada, you're wrong. But we're still going to side with the best interests of Canada. And now today, they're at a place where it costs, in any other pipeline in North America, costs average of $10 to transport 1 barrel of oil. The average, $10, $11. And this pipeline is going to get almost 1 million a day of barrels, but it's going to cost $23. So no customer is going to want to put their oil through our pipeline when it's going to cost more than double the cost of any other pipeline. So they're not going to use it. So Canada, even though we told them it doesn't make economic sense, they're going to subsidize somebody to put their oil through the pipeline up to $12 per barrel. And there's over a million barrels a day, which equals to about $16 billion that they're going to subsidize somebody to use that pipeline. And that's taxpayers' money. And we told them that. But we settled for that. It was on the news and nobody cares. It's on the news that the floods are happening all over the world. It's on the news that and you step outside of your house in the summer and it's smoky. And Lytton burnt down and Fort McMurray burnt down and we're cut off from the rest of Canada with the floods. We're conditioned to not to give a BS. We're conditioned because we're stifled in our belief that we don't have no individual thought to try to make something better for our future generations. We're conditioned in that. And I talk about in that book that and I say, you're living in trauma. If you think that way, you're living in severe trauma that you're not exploring. And I say, why don't you put down those false values of beliefs of the trauma that you're living in and find a ceremony, find a better way of life, find your individual self and love you for the person that you should be, the person that you're born to be, not the person that society wants you to be. And let's move forward. And I said, why not? Why not love yourself more? Why not love your kids more? Why not love your partner more? I love my partner. I'm a goofball sometimes, and she forgives me for how wacky I am, but she loves me. Mm-hmm. I'm a non-wacky person, but she loves me, and I'm learning to love her more. But why not? That's what the book's about. It's like, don't look at me, the poor Indian. Fix yourself. Let's fix our world at the same time, because that's what will happen.
Yeah. Well, and I really think that that's such an important message, Chief Rueben. You've said so much there, and I want to tie together a couple of things that you had said in the beginning about, whatever religion you are, whatever spiritual path you're on, is to, live it, be it, and embody it, and, then when you talked about the residential school, I don't even know how I would even describe that, but it's just absolutely not okay. Just the hypocrisy of what happened there when, if you're thinking, the Catholics and religion, it should all be love. It should all be equal. And what happened there is an atrocity. But I love what you're saying in terms of, breaking down the conditioning, and where I feel that the, medicines really help people kind of wake up out of their head. That journey from your head to your heart is one of the longest journeys you'll ever take. But it's about how we really work with that so that we can embody and find that path to spirit. It's kind of where we started up before. If you don't have that connection, how do you get that? And your story about your daughter and the school system really resonates with me because of that conditioning, is to, as you said, be your authentic self, be you, versus being what you've kind of been created and conditioned to be. And I think that that's a really powerful message. And it's a funny story I heard one time. Is almost a joke, and it was about a preacher at church, and he kept telling the same sermon week after week. And somebody finally said, "Father, you're saying the same sermon week after week. Are you okay?" And he said, "I'm going to keep saying it until you guys listen." until you do and act and embody what we're talking about. And I just want to encourage you to, keep, sharing your voice, sharing your message, and be out there, because it's a very, very powerful message that needs to be heard, and people need to be able to realize and come to terms and a realization of, how we can move forward in a better way in our society today. So I just want to thank you, because I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
No question
so,
there.
Rueben, on that note, actually, there's this sacred circle, right? You're involved with that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so Marc's asking, or talking about sharing the message, as it were, and I'd be interested, or I imagine the viewers and listeners would be interested in hearing about the work of Sacred Circle, because I have this notion, again, sort of slightly above my pay grade, because I'm on the outside of that, of course, that traditionally indigenous people of Turtle Island, and probably many other parts of the world, but certainly Turtle Island, have passed information, knowledge, and even products at great distances. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that sort of thread of way of spreading information and connection is still extant. It's still there. And I'm wondering if Sacred Circle is having a big part in that.
A big part in, sorry, can you say that again?
What is Sacred Circle doing, and is it connecting to Indigenous people around Turtle Island or even beyond?
No, but yes, but we work with others too. We work with Phil Lane and his group, the Heart Medicine, and but we got a big grant. A huge one to service Indigenous people with the legal, so ketamine, and so we're starting off with that, but we're always willing to work with or to educate. I think the problem is there's so few of us so far. So one of the goals is to just to get going, and we've been doing a lot of friends and family first, but now we're slowly starting to branch out and open it up. And actually, looking at you guys, Marc, and to start to slowly open it up. And there's a couple organizations that we want to work with that are international. The Virginia Satir Healing Model. They're interested in working with us, and we'd like to solidify a relationship with them. They're globally. They have over 500,000 people globally trained in their healing practices. So globally, and but there's one local organization we want to work with in particular, and start to give services to not just Indigenous, but start to slowly open it up. But and that's two routes too, because I do my own thing with journeys, but also I work too with Sacred Circle. So Sacred Circle's doing a lot of the legal work, working with doctors and therapists, and I do that too. But they're being mindful of the grant that we're part of, and we don't mix the two.
Are you people working with ketamine much now?
Yeah. It's starting. We're going to push out our first program. We got a grant to do a study, and it's going well.
Are you? What kind of results are you seeing from ketamine journeying?
Well, it's in the prelim stages, and just like everything else, it's good. Things are going good, but we're at the very beginning stages of working with that.
That's great.
Our personal experiences. Again, we don't tell somebody what to do unless we're willing to do it ourselves. From my own experience, it's phenomenal. The healing that we have, and my family members that went through, it's pretty amazing to see the results that are coming out. And I know it's hard too, because we have to work in partnerships in some cases, and so we did in this example, and it's synthetic, but who's to say it doesn't have a spirit? Who's to say that different things don't have a spirit? And I think what people get stuck on, and I see this in the medicine field, that if something really works for you, you think everyone else should be using that thing. If you're a peyote person, you say, this is the thing. If you're ayahuasca, this is the thing. If you're mushroom, this is the thing, or whatever it might be. But they're all good. They're all good, and they're all really powerful spirits that help people, that heal people. And so they are good things. But we're open to doing what is right, and what we do believe in as mushrooms are what's been helping our people for since time out of mind, and that's been particular that I like to work with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's great that you said whatever works in that sense. I believe that too. You know, some people make a distinction between the semi-synthetic and synthetic substances and the natural. But if it opens your spirit, if it opens your mind to a larger world, then and it works, then great.
It's like you almost explained a human being.
Yeah.
Well, and a synthetically grown one.
and I think it's important for people who are interested in, as well as what I've learned over the years, just by experience and by many of the great teachers we've had, is, you know, not every medicine is for everybody, and you don't find that out unless you actually experience them to find out what works best for you. And that being said, I think it's really important that you are in the right set and setting, which always comes up. It's one of the most important things, that, you know, you have the right facilitation, the right guides, you know, a great, you know, mindset and setting of where you're at while you experience these medicines. It's not something to take lightly, because they are serious. And I think that it's just a really important aspect, because, again, these medicines aren't for everybody, and not everybody, or every medicine is for everybody. And I'm really glad that you gentlemen brought that up, because it's just something that I think people need to be aware of. And the psychedelic renaissance, as it comes up, people get excited, and it's like, oh, they want to try these things because they hear all these great stories. Yet sometimes they're not the right things for people. So I just want to throw that in there.
And you're right. We have to be careful. We have a 12-page intake form.
Mm.
If we need to, we could do, you know, people argue against this, but we'll take any precaution if it helps. We have capabilities to do a DNA test to see if there's going to be a physical reaction to what you're taking. You know, we look at the psychological history of the people that are taking the medicine, and safety is the utmost, most important thing. And not just the medicine ceremony, but in any ceremony should be like that.
That's
Every
great.
ceremony should be like that. And so we take it very, very serious. It's not a joke. It's not a party. It's not, you know, over the top mystical. It's serious ceremony that deserves the reverence, because it's holy. And you look at our ceremonial homes, our sweat lodge has a cover and a dome on it because it's intimate. Our longhouses is done in a longhouse because it's intimate. Our healing's intimate. And this is no different. You know, one thing I do like about some of the medicine is, you know, my son said this. He goes, you know, modern psychology is individualized, but as a nation of indigenous people, we're communal. So I believe in communal psychology, but that's like this medicine too. Sometimes it's good individualized, but sometimes it's good in a group too, to heal with one another. Our sweats are together, and our potlatches and longhouses are together, and so. But some parts is individualized, so it's what people need and what we find out in their intake of how we could help them. It's sort of like picking that song and that medicine. What works for somebody, and what approach do we use that will work for somebody, and we'll figure that out in their intake.
This is really far out, maybe question, but could you ever imagine bringing one of these plant medicines like psilocybin into a sweat lodge ceremony?
I think it's been done before. I think, you know, I think if you look at it, every indigenous in North America had a sweat lodge and pipes. You go to museum anthropology, there's so many different types of pipe. There's co-Salish, interior Salish, Idaguay, carrier, Cree, Lakota. There's all these different types of pipes. And it's the same as sweat lodges, like sweat. We went to my oldest uncle, like 30 years ago, he was he's an elder, he's old, and I said, did we have sweats? And he goes, yeah, but it's up to you to find what we did in them. And so, some people have their beliefs that they'd never ever do that. And there's some people have their beliefs will never ever do a medicine like this. My own family, and that's good. I respect that. My own family said they'll never ever do anything like that, and that's good. I respect that. I 100% respect that. And some people believe that around the sweats too. But did I think it happened? Oh yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, we are getting close to wrapping up, and I wanted to respect everybody's time. We talked about being here for about an hour, but maybe real quick, Chief Rueben, I know we've had such a great conversation. The title of your talk is the title of your book for the conference this year, but maybe you can give people just a quick snapshot of something a little different you might be sharing at the conference that will intrigue them to come and meet you and see you in person. We're actually exactly 4 weeks away today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, it has a spirit, and it needs to be approached with holiness and reverence. There has to be teachings behind it, and then the narrative is so important. And you need to take time to introduce yourself to the medicine and know and understand it. Like what I was explaining about the sweat lodge. When I help people and they come to sweat, I teach them about the rocks, but I want them to explore the idea of the lava rock themselves. I said, we use firewood from a tree, but as well as that tree reaches up and catches the energy of the sun, like I said, but it uses its roots to clean up the nutrients and eat the nutrients in the earth. And then it catches the water with its leaves and its roots with its leaves. It takes carbon monoxide and changes it into oxygen. We're like a human being. It needs fire, earth, and water and sky. It needs it. That kind of energy we're releasing onto those rocks that are bringing into the sweat lodge. It should be no different about how we approach these sacred medicines. Take the time to know and learn and understand what you're taking, where it comes from, its purpose. If you don't know, ask. Ask and be taught. Be taught and again, make it beautiful and set those narratives. Don't put your ego in front of it. When I first started going to peyote meetings, I only been a couple, but my first one, my teacher held the peyote button in his hand and said, this medicine could really, really help you. If you disrespect it, it could really, really ruin you. And that's the same with these medicines, I believe. It could help us or it could ruin us. And let's be on the good side of it and understand it and love it. We'll grow to learn to have a reciprocal relationship of spirit to it. And it'll be good.
Beautifully
Great.
said.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was such a great way to start wrapping up. Any last words, Mr. Gray?
Well, one kind of feeling that has come numerous times in this conversation, it stops here, beautiful, is respect for what you folks are doing, admiration for what you're doing. It's got great potential. I'm really touched by that. So thank you for that, Rueben. I would like to ask you a question after we stop the record button, if you don't mind hanging around for a couple of minutes.
I remember I spoke at your conference, was it 15 years ago or something?
You were the you did the sort of opening dedication, actually, at the
UBC,
very first one. It was 2011, actually.
Wow, I remember that.
The small room. It was we only had something like 70, 75 people paying participants that year. And then we moved into the Buchanan building for a number of years. I don't think you came to any of those. Yeah.
I remember that.
Well, we look forward to having you again this year in actually 4 weeks from today. I look forward to connecting as always. And I invite everyone who wants to learn more about, spirit plant medicines and healing with these traditional ancient medicines in many cases, and to meet Chief Rueben George in person, because he will be around. We invite you to come and join us November 3rd, 4th, and 5th out at UBC in Vancouver. And of course, online. You can join us from anywhere in the world with our interactive live stream, where you can join us in Zoom, where it'll be interactive, and we'll even have some speakers come in and share a few words with you, as well as a private one-on-one in that Zoom room. So we just encourage everybody, if you're curious, if you want to know more, spiritplantmedicine.com. My name is Marc Caron with Stephen Gray, and it's just always an honor, Chief Rueben, to learn from you and to hear what you have to share. And I just want you to know that anytime you have anything you want to share, please reach out. You've always got a platform with us. We'd be happy to share your message, whatever that might be, whenever that may be. And anybody else, we also just want to say thank you to a bunch of our sponsors. There's a whole bunch of them. Thank you to Hubcast, Unify, Conscious Living Network, and Radio, who originally started Spirit Plant Medicine. We have Filament Health, Cosmic Sisters, Sabia, Dragonfly Earth Medicine, Ad Lucum Law. And we just want to thank everybody, because it's your support that makes these programs and our conference possible. And we just want to thank everybody. So thanks again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.